I didn't care about Morgan. I wrote her off of like, no one's even going to remember her. And now I'm like, that's cool. This is so funny how much I've come to appreciate animated Star Wars.
Krypton to Alderaan. Krypton to Alderaan. Krypton to Alderaan. Krypton to Alderaan.
Welcome everyone to Krypton to Alderaan. I'm Joey, your Star Wars lover, and with me is Royish Good Looks, your Star Wars song guy.
Hello, Joey. Hello, podcast.
Hello, and we're the podcast that analyzes nerdy pop culture, but it's mostly Star Wars. And this episode, we are going to be discussing both arcs of Tales of the Empire. Bum, bum, bum. But first, we are so excited about the traction we've gotten recently and all the conversations we've had. We are so close to 1,000 subs. If you have not already, subscribe. Help us on our road to 1,000 subscribers. It's been so exciting to see. We are both just so grateful to everyone who has already subscribed. So give us a like, give us a subscribe. Thank you all so much. Let's punch it. Well. Tales of the Empire. We are entering into the exact time frame that at the end of our last episode you wanted to see more of, Roy. So how are you feeling coming out of Tales, having spent 2 arcs in that exact time frame?
It's funny you mentioned that because I didn't even think about the nomenclature. Like, obviously the trailer, we knew we were going to get a little Grievous, a little Morgan. Did we know Barriss was in the trailer too, I assume?
Yeah.
I have no familiarity with her, so
sad.
That threw me for a loop. But yes, this era, great. Man, and I'm going to call back to you on previous episodes. It's filling in the gaps. We're seeing the somehow Morgan Elsbeth amassed 3 Star Destroyers. We're seeing it. I love it.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to get into it. But I really enjoyed that we got some backstory here. I was very happy with that.
I really like the idea of this Tales system, this series of anthology stories that we're getting that are just kind of like standalone arcs, a lot like Visions, but where Visions is obviously non-canon, this is considered canon. I really like the idea of this. I'm trying to be as diplomatic as possible here. I really like the idea of this structure. I said it last week too. I really love the filling in the gaps in general, but especially in this time frame where we do have a large gap to fill that hasn't been filled by books and comic books and stuff like that. So it is great to see, and I'm excited to see it. There's some stuff I'm maybe less excited to see in retrospect, but I do think it's worth considering this in terms of filling in these gaps within the canon. And we've had conversations about what does canon mean? Do we care if it's canon or not? And I have said years ago, after our Visions Volume 1 review, I kind of came out of that being I really loved Visions. So I think I'm not quite the canonophile anymore, or it should not have that much of an impact on my enjoyment of a thing. But that gets really hard to take myself out of when watching something like this.
Yeah. I mean, this is the classic, you're coming in with some expectations and they're subverting your expectations.
Yeah. Thanks, Ryan.
And that's impacting how you're feeling about the property. And me, I'm on the other side of I didn't really like Visions at first because it's kind of I shouldn't say I didn't like Visions, but some of the reasons I didn't like it as much as other Star Wars properties is because it's one short story and it's gone, canon or not. There's not enough to dive into. It's not as exciting. It doesn't feel like as much of a spectacle when it's a one-off thing. And Tales of the Empire and Tales of the Jedi is sort of like that. Maybe we're not going to revisit this Morgan Elsbeth arc, but she's also in a Mandalorian episode. She's in Ahsoka. It's nice to spend a little more time with these characters in, if you want to call them an arc. They're 10-minute episodes, so they're it's kind of like one long episode of Bad Batch broken into thirds because we're time jumping in between each. I like that there's a little bit more there than at least Visions. But it sounds like, we're going to have to get into it. You're going to have to let the gloves come off, Joey, that regardless of the formatting of it, what they gave us seems to be maybe rubbing you a little bit of the wrong way. I was not concerned of the idea of these being canon or not canon. I still kind of enjoyed them on their own, just overall. But I do really like what they did in expanding, especially Morgan's character. I don't really know Barriss, but maybe that will pay off in retrospect when I finally finish my Clone Wars binge.
Yeah, I have varying feelings about these two arcs, and some of it has to do with canon, and some of it just has to do with what I enjoy from Star Wars storytelling. But you had also said that you were excited to see more of Morgan because she wasn't necessarily your favorite character in Mando or in Ahsoka. So I'm curious to see where you lie on that now. After having seen these, did this elevate? We're always talking about like this content elevated this other content for me, which I love. I want the animated shows to do that for me because that's what Clone Wars did for the prequel trilogy for me. Did that happen for you in this particular setting?
Yeah, I think that's the callback to your we're seeing the somehow. When Morgan Elsbeth shows up in Ahsoka, my initial reaction, I don't think we put it on air on the podcast, but I had told you at some point, like, no one's going to remember she was in Mandalorian in one episode briefly. Although maybe you would remember the scene where Ahsoka says, "Where's Grand Admiral Thrawn?" It was literally only there for the dramatic reveal for the Ahsoka show. Kind of funny in retrospect. But I can now tie all three of those properties together now. And it is literally the seeing the somehow Palpatine returned. Seeing why Morgan makes sense in that one episode in The Mandalorian. And even Ahsoka as well. I loved how she gets the call at the end of the third one of who's asking for help. And it sounds like it's Bo-Katan, and that's Din's connection to Ahsoka. Okay, great. That's filled in a gap there. That if
I rolled my eyes on air, everyone listening, I rolled my eyes.
I don't know if that was a show, not tell, or tell, don't show, but they filled in a gap there that made sense for me in something I've made fun of in the past. And then the connection with Thrawn of Morgan's built, she designed the TIE Defender. And Thrawn's like, it's a cool ship. Empire doesn't care, but I care. You're kind of smart. We should team up. Here's my fleet. And it's like, oh, that's why Morgan has a badass ship in Ahsoka. It tied all that stuff together. And initially, I didn't care about her character at all. I wrote her off of like, no one's even going to remember her. And now I'm like, she is the genius behind the TIE Defender. That's cool. And Thrawn respects her. And, you know, she's got this whole revenge plot, which I think is maybe why I don't, maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but maybe that's why you aren't into her story, is because she's got very few redeeming qualities. She's just fallen from grace and she can't find a way out. Complete opposite from Barriss's story. But I love how all that ties into the canon, pushing my glasses up.
Yeah. Nerd. Who does she want revenge against? Who? This is one of the parts of this that confused me. I do appreciate getting more backstory. I'm starting to sweat. I do appreciate getting more backstory to the character. I really do. I liked the first episode. I could have guessed that that's what happened. I knew that that's how it went down. You know, I didn't know the mountain tribes and stuff like that. But yeah, so first episode was great. Love seeing Grievous again. The Battle of Dathomir, getting to revisit that. Cool to see. Thrawn approaches her in the second one. She wants revenge. Against who? She says she wants revenge. There's no one left. I don't get it. There's beats in this story that I really don't understand. I really don't want to rewrite it, but if she had like a vision of the other Nightsisters, or if they were already calling to her from Peridia and she knew she had to get in line with the Empire to get there, that would have at one point she says she had a vision. And it's like, why didn't we see that? Like, we're here for you. It's not like some other broad story or plot is going on. We are here for you. Show us that vision if it has to do with this. It was just so confusing to me, some of the story beats that they made, and then the Empire adopting her because her hate would be good. It's like the Empire is part of the reason why the witches got destroyed in the first place. So I can't understand who she wants revenge against. This is another thing where maybe there also could be in the future an episode about Thrawn, because I really don't understand with the current canon that exists why Thrawn would want the Empire the way that he does, if he's doing it to battle the threat that's coming from his part of the galaxy, the Grisk aliens that are coming from his part of the galaxy. Great, but that's never stated. Anyway, there's story beats that I really don't understand and that I found confusing. And it really kept taking me out of the story, not being able to really understand her motivations. And they just throw the TIE Defender thing in there out of nowhere. It's like, okay, well, were we supposed to... I understand that it's a short amount of time to tell the story, but all of a sudden she's inventing this new spaceship.
If anything, Joey, I will agree. Like, wait, she's a witch, but she's also a intergalactic ship engineer.
Yeah.
But this might be like member berries with me. Maybe I'm being fooled by some of this. But I like that also ties in with, is that Corellia, where they're building the engines for her, though, or the decommissioned Star Destroyer parts that are going to Morgan? I'm like, oh, that makes sense why she would have the inn. It would make sense like those people are loyal to the Empire or Thrawn, and that's a connection to Morgan. So all that is starting to like tie together for me. I agree, though, like, why would Thrawn just want to hire someone that's in it for revenge when he just said people in the Empire are short-sighted, they're only in it for themselves? So that's also, shouldn't Morgan have more of a vision? I agree. And that could have been really interesting if she's like, here's what I think the future of the galaxy looks like. You and I could maybe set some of these pieces up. That would be a little bit more juicy, but I didn't care in the moment. So I think that's all, again, like you're thinking a little too far ahead. You wanted more time. You needed more episodes, which I would have loved. A Thrawn animated show might be better than like Thrawn in live action because there's so many things to juggle. I really loved when he's just going on his monologue and they've got his cool little mystical, like eerie theme in the background. I just enjoyed the like vibe, I guess, rather than the consequence of like the whole story they were telling. And I'll give the asterisks of maybe some member berries that I was just able to tie it in and it felt good. It just felt good to me rather than, well, Thrawn's smarter than that. He just wouldn't want a partner that's in it for revenge. That's dumb. No wonder, Morgan fell to the dark side. She doesn't see, a brighter future ahead.
If some of this story is eventually told from Thrawn's perspective, I think it would be a lot. Maybe it would be that little key to all of this for me because he is very tactile and he does pick his allies for a reason. Everything has a reason with him, and it's just hard to see this. And again, yeah, you're right. He says many in the Empire would trade lives for profit. Over time, this will create a weak and disillusioned military. Well, I mean, that's not too far off of what she's doing here. She's only in it for revenge and she'll do whatever to get it, but there's no one to get revenge against. That's the part that what is driving you now, Morgan?
Right. Or could we use your TIE Defender technology to perhaps go to a different galaxy or the one extra nugget there?
Yeah. I really enjoyed the TIE Defender's a cool design. I really enjoy it. Kudos on her for thinking of it. I mean, I don't really remember how that fits in. I know Thrawn is pitching it in Rebels and also in some of the Thrawn books. With all of that juxtaposed to the Barriss episodes, I do have a connection to this character, more so than maybe I did Morgan. But I really genuinely thought that even with the canon that's wrapped up and some of the changes to the canon that are made in this arc, it was just so much more interesting to me personally. I should just say, I ranted about the Morgan thing for a long time. Anyone who likes it, Royce, this maybe is getting a little bit of Joey versus Royce here. We'll continue to duke it out. But if you liked it, great. Whatever you like is great and continue to like it. And don't let anybody tell you not to like it. And there, I filled my quota for saying that thing.
For sure. I mean, Morgan is miserable, though. Who were you supposed to root for in that story? That was hard. You could feel bad that she lost her family and now she's got to rise back up. But being fueled by revenge, and then you bring Thrawn in and you're like, I like Thrawn as a bad guy. But like Morgan, it's just kind of a fall from grace, right? And I think the point there was to literally juxtapose with Barriss's story. I can already see why you might enjoy hers more. Why should I give a hoot about Barriss? Varys? I don't even know who she is.
That's what we'll call the episode. Why should we give a hoot about Tales of the Empire? Yeah, it was just much more intriguing to me. I think both Barriss and Morgan essentially lost their families. So in the Clone Wars, Barriss kind of turns on the Jedi and frames Ahsoka for a bombing in the Jedi Temple. But her point is that the Jedi are not good. The Jedi are kind of destroying the galaxy. They are funding war. They don't care about the everyday people. She has some points, and we see that the Jedi are not necessarily good. So that's the way it like shakes out, and she gets put in that prison that we find her in the beginning of this arc. With Morgan losing her family, she goes and tries to recruit another family and gets them killed. There's a lot of heartbreak there. They both suffered the loss of their family. There was much more emotion, I think, in the Barriss story than in the Morgan story, where there's like one little hint later in the Morgan story. When she's on Corvus, she says, they're so quick to turn on me. They're not my people after all I've done for them. And there's a little bit there where you're like, could feel for her. But then for me, there wasn't a whole lot more than that where I could be like, oh, she's doing the wrong things for the right reasons. With Barriss, she's confused, she's sad, she's broken, and the Empire and the Inquisitors know how to take advantage of that. She saw the flaws in the Jedi, and the Inquisitors know how to get that from her and turn her into something else. And even when she's an Inquisitor, she still believes that what they're doing is good. She believes that they are doing what the Jedi should have done. Let's complete our mission and allow them to prosper. We're here to get the Jedi. She believes that the Jedi were traitors and stuff like that. Maybe she doesn't fully believe it. Maybe she's questioning it, but she's being fed the propaganda. But she wants the people of the galaxy to do better under a different rule. She begins to question it in the episode Realization. And then it ends with her, having the realization. But that's why I was much more drawn and found the Barriss story much more interesting. We actually go on a maybe emotional journey with her. There's also lots of good action. There's a lot of lightsabers, which hell yeah, Star Wars. Yeah, the emotional storytelling and being connected to the character really made me like this arc a lot more.
Yeah, getting to see behind the scenes with the Inquisitors, super cool, like building that base and building up the Inquisitors. I loved seeing a little bit of that. I also take away the lightsabers. I love a good defensive maneuver. I'm going to do it on the podcast screen here. It's not going to translate to audio. We'll have to include
He's doing it all right.
Screen caps. But when you're just running away from the saber, the Grand Inquisitor does that initially, and then later on, Barriss is doing that. I love I have such control over my powers. I don't even need to fight you to best you in the duel. The reason I like this Tales of the Empire as a whole is that ties back to the other arc. Morgan just wants to constantly fight. Let's go to the armory. Let's get some weapons. Let's kick some ass. I invented a weapon. Don't you want to buy the weapon from me? And then the mountain people are like, we choose not to fight. It's not because we can't. We just don't. So I love the parallel between the two arcs. That's obviously part of this. And part of why I think this Tales property is, for me, a little bit more interesting than maybe Visions would be, because they relate to each other a little bit. They've got a light and a dark side, a push and a pull, a parallel, where it's not just all individual one-offs, where it's like, oh, I like that one, I don't like this one. To draw the meaning between two of them is a little bit more abstract. That packaging for me kind of sold it, and I watched them all back to back. So that also might have to do with it, that I just watched them all in 1 hour. Didn't you kind of split up the arcs?
Yeah, I watched the Morgan one, and then I was kind of like, oh, I don't feel very good about that, so I'm going to hold off on watching the Barriss one, and I watched the Barriss one the next day. So I split it up.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not like they're one story, but I think that there's an intention of the two stories they wanted to tell in the beats within those two stories that maybe relate to each other. Maybe I'm wrong, but I kind of enjoyed that.
I really think the beginning of Morgan's story so much parallels the beginning of Kanan Jarrus's story, where Order 66 goes down, his master tells him to run, her mother tells her to run, and they both end up dying. And then the guilt, the really great story after that, is told in, both Rebels, but also a comic book series called Kanan, where the guilt that the character feels is kind of what drives them or is a burden to them. And I wish we had gotten more of that from Morgan. That would have made it much more interesting. With Barriss, we get what she believes the Jedi should have been. And then when she realizes it's not, she goes and does that on her own, which I really loved. She goes out into the wilderness and she's the healer. And I loved that she took control of that and became something better. There's beautiful poetry storytelling there. She was a Jedi. She thought she was doing good. The prequel era Jedi were not that good a lot of times. So she betrayed them. Then she became an Inquisitor, which was bad. And now she's she goes out on her own and takes lessons from both and becomes better. She lets go and then becomes the best. She lets go and then she can face the Inquisitor without a weapon, right? She faces Lynn, fourth sister, without a lightsaber, without a weapon. And she's able to do that dance to parry, to dodge and stuff like that. I don't know, man. There was just something there that was more, that just had me. It had me by the heart. It just was more intriguing to me.
And saving the young child and presumably putting them off onto the path sort of thing. That's another part of the filling in of the gaps that we want to see. We've said that so many times. Wouldn't that be cool to see more of how they're developing that and who's aiding in that? She's playing her own role there. When they're in the village and she's talking to the young kid and trying to find out where the Jedi is so they can so she can sort of save the village, right? But then of course they end up murdering everybody there. Like there's some nice emotional moments there that are the reason she turns back to the light side. And that's the beauty in this is she becomes the best version of herself while Morgan is just kind of dragged down into this pit by revenge. And obviously by the titling of the episodes, that's the point that they're trying to tell us. That's the story that they've set up through these two arcs.
It's really interesting what you're saying about the two storylines paralleling each other. I didn't consider that part of it all that much. Maybe I should go back and rewatch it when we're done talking about it here and look at it through a different lens.
We say that all the time. It's if you've only seen it once or if you watched it when you're in a bad mood or whatever, that plays a role into it.
Right.
I'm not saying we haven't ranked these amongst the rest of our Star Wars property. Who knows? Stay tuned. Subscribe for that episode in the future.
Yeah.
That's what I liked about it. Like you're saying, pull from it what you will. I'm a format guy. And I think that these two arcs were formatted well to work together for me. So maybe it is worth trying to put them together rather than saying I liked one arc, I didn't like the other arc, because that's not exactly, I don't know if we said this on air or if this was before we started recording, but what was the vision by Dave Filoni within this, If that was part of it, then we have to maybe consider that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. This is all Dave Filoni's vision. So even the changes made in things it's always been part of Star Wars. George Lucas made the original trilogy, but his vision was something different. So we got the special editions and then, extra stuff added even later. And so this is all Dave Filoni's vision. And it's the stories that he wants to tell and how he wants to tell them. And he's created these characters, and that's not nothing. So I think definitely respect the vision. Respect has to be given to the vision. But I do think we also need to factor in what we like about Star Wars and what we like about art personally and critique things that way. We tend to do it generously. And so for me, I just really liked the Barriss story more. I found it more intriguing and more interesting. I think, like you said, I really loved the redemption, maybe the redemption arc we had there that we didn't get with Morgan. Maybe we'll get more Morgan stories later that will elevate all of this for me. That's another thing, more stuff is coming out more all the time. I mean, there was just so many gems in the Barriss one. Fear is not your ally, it's mine, when Barriss is trying to stop Lynn from going into the cave. And then later Barriss is it seems like Fear is less of an ally and more of a master. And I'm get her, Barriss, get her. I loved that. I loved the cave sequence. That was very engaging and actiony. I think there was also just a lot more action maybe in the Barriss arc. But hey, I still love animated Star Wars. Animated Star Wars is still the GOAT. I'm not going to stop waving my Star Wars animation flag anytime soon.
Yeah, if anything, this is so funny how much I've come to appreciate the animated Star Wars, which, by the way, just to rewind, I love that ally versus master line. That's lyric worthy. I could probably do a whole song on that. I don't know if that's been said in other properties, but it's such a powerful concept there.
Yeah.
The Force is your ally or your master, or your hate is your ally or your master. There's so many ways to interpret that dialogue there that I loved. Yeah, dude, the animation is so strong, and especially with Tales, because it's we don't have to go through a 16 episode season where it's so dense and it could go so many different ways. And it's there's just a couple of extracurricular activities to flesh out the entire thing. I selfishly want more. I think in a whole season with either of those characters could be cool. I am at least appreciative that they have a little arc to them. So a little meatier than, again, Visions. We're really lucky to have them at all,
Yes.
I forget what the stats that people have been talking about with Phantom Menace, that the time between the originals and Phantom is the difference between this and that or the other thing. We get so much Star Wars that it's ridiculous to complain about any of it because you can just pick and choose. I hate to be a broken record on the show, but just move on to the next thing. And I can't wait for the next thing. If they do another Tales next year, we're going to get another 2 arcs of things filled in. Maybe it'll be for you. Maybe it won't be for you, but everything makes it better and better. It just makes me love it more and more. I didn't care about Morgan. She's still not my favorite character, but now I could talk to you about Morgan Elsbeth with the different eras of time, from the early Empire to the New Republic to whatever is happening in Ahsoka. I love that. that they've expanded on that character over that entire timeline. And that's classic Star Wars.
I love it when we switch hats. We seem to switch hats and you take the animation flag and wave it a bit more.
Dude, I haven't even waved it enough yet. Like, it's better than it's better than live action, period.
Yep, 100%.
I guess that's not generous to pit those against each other, but animation, I'm not sure if it like takes more risks, like, or what is it about animation that I appreciate more? They just somehow, it lands harder than some of the live action stuff. Maybe that's because you have to rely on actors and their performances, and there's more moving pieces, more opportunity for things to go awry versus when you're animating something and it goes exactly the way you want. They could do so much more in post with an animated show, potentially, or even in pre-production. Like, you could figure the whole thing out and perfect it a little bit more than, everyone complained about Ahsoka standing still all the time. And that's something in animation, like, you could get around more easily. Or even you're saying the action in Barriss's episode was engaging. So you can set it up already for success, probably just easier than it is in a live action show. So I think that the quality standard is just higher in animation than live action. And I still love a lot of things about live action. It just seems like it's easier for things to go wrong in that, or not land in the way that we want them to land. Or I don't like the makeup on, Hera. Hera's makeup is weird, which is like a dumb thing, has nothing to do with the story. But in animation, right? How many times have we complained about an animated character? Maybe the lightsabers are really thin in Rebels.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, there's my waving of the animation flag. I'm in. I want to bring more people into it, but you have to kind of you do have to be a little bit of the canon of file. It's weird. Like, you have to give yourself up to wanting to know all of these intricacies, which are the reason that some of the live action stuff falls short, because we shoehorn in things too quickly. We don't give them enough time. 8 episodes, come on, longer than that. And fill in the gaps, but the animated shows do that. So it's so funny. You have to come over to the animated side of the table.
Join us. I've been saying this for years, and in fact, to you for years. So I'm very happy that we're here and we're both on the same page with that, because there is just so much more you can do. There's so much more being done, and it's all amazing. Another thing in these episodes was that the animation was incredible to look at. We're progressing the quality of animation itself, and then the stories are just great. I mean, Dave Filoni, again, he hasn't let us down. I might not have appreciated the Morgan episodes all that much, but still Dave Filoni has not let us down.
I'll give a gripe, though. It's too dark. You got to lighten up the animation. Maybe that's part of why it looks so good, but I kid you not, I literally wear a hat when I watch it in my kitchen, because when I'm on my kitchen table, there's too much sunlight. So I put a hat on to get the glare off of my computer screen a little bit. So sometimes it's a little too dark, but looks great, sounds great. General Grievous's lightsaber going whoa, 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 sunk up with the music at one point. And I was like, ha, that's pretty cool. So
that's neat.
Obviously fantastic production as per usual. So one thing that I'm wondering is is it too little, not enough? Would it have just been better off a whole series? Would it be better off as just the Visions one-off episodes? And then they don't step on too many toes, right? It could just be that one little story.
I mean, for me personally, I would say I like the idea of Tales. I like the structure of Tales. I like the 15-minute episodes. They just fit in. It's a puzzle piece. It's like one piece of the puzzle that we're fitting in perfectly. And I really enjoyed that. I think we would also get into there's so many things that could go wrong in a 15 or 16 episode season with any of these particular things. I love fitting them in this way. There are changes that are made to the current canon when they do stuff like this. That's not the original lineup of Inquisitors that Vader meets. I just pulled out the comic book and took a look to make sure I was correct when I noticed that. But there's changes that are made, but again, it's Dave Filoni's vision, and I like the size, I guess. It's very consumable. I think they do a good job in 3 15-minute episodes of filling in the most amount of gap, the most amount of stuff that we actually want to know about and see happen on screen with those particular characters.
Yeah, it's an interesting parameter they're putting themselves into, that we can't go too far. I think I would agree that it's probably the right amount. But it doesn't matter if it was a whole season, if it's one episode, if it's an arc of episodes, it still has to be great for what it is. There's always going to be an asterisk on whether it works or not, regardless of the format, even though sometimes we do really kind of grade it on that. But man, I could go for more. Yeah, I'm very happy with it. I'm a little bit bummed to see how much hate there is out there. Not necessarily the reasons that you've said today, but the more kind of shallow reasons, like I want more Empire.
It's called Tales of the Empire, and there wasn't any Empire.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And I guess I'm happy to go for more if they want to go for more. But like you said, just a puzzle piece. Here's what you get for now. It can fill in the gaps, not just for the shows and the movies, but literally in between other properties. It's nice that we got a little something in between Bad Batch and The Acolyte. And man, it'd be cool if this was like Weezer. They did a couple EPs like back to back within 1 year that made a whole kind of album sort of thing. Or I guess those were whole albums. But that would also be kind of cool if every season of the year, we got a drop of episodes that were different puzzle pieces following a thread.
I do like that. We're very lucky to be getting this stuff at all. And it was really nice to get something in between Bad Batch and Acolyte. It would be awesome to get stuff like this in between each release. We don't know what's coming after Acolyte. So maybe if there was something that happened in between Acolyte and whatever comes next, that would be real nice, Star Wars, since we have absolutely no idea when the next thing is. But you know what? We'll take it one day at a time. You know what Yoda would say about me? Always my mind on the future, never on where I was or what I was doing. I'm looking too far ahead. We just have to be happy with what we have now. And what we have now is Tales of the Empire and Krypton to Alderaan. So you're welcome.
Oh, man. But I could go for a constant stream of awesome Star Wars content. Is that too much to ask for?
No, I don't think it is.
All right, listeners, let's keep this conversation going. What did you think of Tales of the Empire? Hey, what did you think of Tales of the Jedi? I think I got to re-listen to our review of that from last year after this conversation today. Go check that out if you haven't as well. We'd love to hear what you thought about the series. Leave your comments if you're here on YouTube. And of course, make sure to subscribe. Help us get to our 1,000 subscriber mark. And tune in next time for more nerdy pop culture, but mostly Star Wars. Thank you for listening to the show today. I've been Royce.
I've been Barriss.
And we've been
Krypton to whatever planet Barriss is from. Oh, we're going to get some hate comments now.
Krypton